Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Sort of funny, I was waking up today looking forward to Leafs Morning Take on a Wednesday, and I was remembering that the Leafs are trying to avenge a 9-3 loss to the Buffalo Sabres. It's really crazy, the turbulence, the ups and downs of this regular season, but it is the case tonight at Scotiabank Arena. It's Nick Alberga and Anthony Stewart here on the Wednesday edition presented by Betano. What's going on, Stewie?
Not too much. I'm doing well today on this fine Wednesday. How goes it you in downtown gloomy Toronto?
Yeah, it's kind of very gloomy, but the weather's been above seasonal, so I think we got to feel good about that. And you know what also was reminded of yesterday was the clock changing this weekend. That stinks.
Yeah, do we lose an hour, gain an hour? So when you're on the dance floor dancing, does the club close later or earlier? What happens? That's the only time I'm really worried about it.
We're springing forward.
So we lose an hour?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, as a big time sleeper and as somebody who catches up on sleep on the weekend, it kind of stinks. I'm sure you feel the same way with everything you have going on in your life. I prefer falling back, although it's like the ultimate catch-22 because in the fall time, you're like, shit, the weather's garbage. I don't want to be outside anyways. And it's a springtime. It's getting better. And it means like there's going to be light at 6 p.m., which is phenomenal to see. But Stewie, anticipation for the deadline obviously coming up on Friday. Do you have any good stories about deadline time to your playing days?
Not for me because I was usually on the waiver wire at that time, most seasons that I was there. But funny one for my brother. My brother was playing for Buffalo, and it's funny. He went at the beginning of the season, and he was talking about, the Buffalo Sabres were going to make playoffs and this and that, and they're like, we're not having any of that. We are tanking for a reason. So he was actually on trade deadline center, and he was talking to Duffy, and they're like, so how does it feel to be traded to the Minnesota Wild? And he's like, pretty good, I guess. So he literally got traded on air. So I'm like, I don't know why you'd be calling in anyways, but they ended up trading him on air too. So it was quite a surprise. And, just hearing it in his voice, he was obviously kind of rattled that he had to hear it from deadline day sources as opposed to hearing it from team management.
Man, you hear wild stories this time of year where even if like you feel connected and you know some players, like there's no way the players are finding out first. It's either going to be the media or somebody connected throughout the league. Look, I even remember back a couple of years ago when Noah Hannafin was dealt to the Calgary Flames from the Carolina Hurricanes, and I still at the time was working at NHL Network Radio. I remember it vividly. It was a Sunday, and I actually had Hannafin's number. I picked up the phone, called him, like, "Hey, you want to come on the show?" He was at a movie theater and had found out about this trade, I guess, like 2 minutes before I called him. So I was almost the guy who told Noah Hannafin he was in some blockbuster deal with Elias Lindholm going, obviously, in the Calgary Flames deal. And all of a sudden, everything comes full circle here. So he's about to be on the movie, you would think, over the next couple of days. And I just remember it's tough to humanize it, but I think it's important this time here. These guys have families and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I use the quote, what about the dogs, right? You're going from Vancouver to potentially Edmonton. True. Well, what about the dogs? How are you going to get them there? And I think that's what's missing is that element of the human element, on just, you want these players performing at a high level, especially during the playoffs where it's very, very stressful. You know what? Them having to move and worry about movers and are they going to be staying in a hotel? Are they going to be doing Uber Eats? So there's all these factors that going into into the trade deadline. People wonder why it's usually only like a 50% hit rate on guys that get traded that do well. So if I'm a team now making a move for a guy that's, coming across the country, you find a way to make that a soft landing and making it as comfortable as possible because it does affect the players in their play, especially if you're trying to win a Stanley Cup. So going above and beyond on the human elements side, I think it goes above and beyond. But how hard is it to make a text or a call to the player right before the trade goal goes through? Hey, you know what? We're working on something. It's probably going to get done in the next 15, 20 minutes. Please stay by your phone. That is a small courtesy that goes a long way, and respect goes a long way in the league. So for teams, that's my one gripe or grinding my gears is, let the players know, keep them in on what's going on. They're big boys.
Yeah, that's the ultimate insult when somebody finds out they're going on waivers or like have been traded through the media or some other platform that's not the actual team they play for. It's insanity to me. But Stewie, we have a big time acquisition ourselves to announce here on the show. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Welcome to Tim Hortons. Roll Up the Rim is back for Tim's 60th anniversary, and to celebrate their big year, you can win some big prizes like an all-electric Volkswagen ID4, a sun-soaked Hilton getaway, and cash with a daily jackpot of $10,000. Play today on the Tim's app. Roll Up the Rim has been a staple for 60 years, or Tim's has been a staple for 60 years, but Roll Up the Rim has been a long time as well, Stu. I'm jacked about this partnership.
Oh, very, very excited. I probably eat, what is the saying? An apple fritter a day keeps the doctor away. So I abide by the doctor's orders. That's a fact.
I think it's an apple, but apple fritters work as well.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
personally a honey cruller guy. I love
Same
honey
thing,
cruller.
right? Same nutritional value, I'm pretty sure.
Yes. Same difference. Big honey cruller guy here. So looking forward to Roll Up the Rim for the entirety of the month of March. And of course, the trade deadline a couple days away. And Stewie, I also got a perfect spot for you to watch games in the Stanley Cup playoffs for the Maple Leafs coming up in a couple months. You ready for this?
Okay, let's go. What do we got?
Everybody knows already, but later this spring, you'll have the perfect place to watch a game. Greta Bar YYZ, which has sister locations in Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver, will officially open its doors. Get this, Stewie, on King Street West. Here we go, baby. Not only will this be a fantastic place to watch a game, but it'll be your go-to spot to pre- and post-game, before and after home games. Also, if you're in the GTA looking for work, Greta YYZ is hosting a hiring fair on March 9th and 10th from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. The address, 590 King Street West. For your information, they're all hiring all positions. For more information, you can find them on Instagram at Greta Bar YYZ or visit gretabar.com. So we got a new spot, my man.
So is that east or west of Spadina? I've never heard of King West. Where's that again?
It's across Two Cats, this new spot. Can't mention Two Cats on this show.
Oh, I'm a Century Room guy. So I was Century Room when it was the original Century Room. Let's just say I've fallen down those stairs a couple times.
It's happened to the best of us, but
That's
this is
hilarious.
fantastic news. This Greta location is right in the prime of King Street West, which I frequent like once a week. So really pumped for that. And most importantly, looking forward to watching Leafs games with Leafs Nation and just talking to our fan base and everybody who watches our programming and our shows and stuff like that. And speaking of which, make sure to check out episode 2 of the Leafs Nation After Dark coming up tonight with Zach Phillips. Of course, going to break down this Leafs and Sabres game at the Leafs Nation 401, where you could subscribe on YouTube, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcasts. And again, if you're watching right now, hammer that subscribe button, turn those notifications on, hammer that like button, much appreciated as well. And Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast, will pop up. Make sure to leave us a review. That would be fantastic. A 5-star review at that. Brought to you by DoorDash. It's time for the appetizer. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off up to $10 in value and 0 delivery fees in their first order of $15 or more. When you download the DoorDash app, enter code NATION25. It's code NATION25, uppercase, 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Offer valid in Canada. Subject to change. Terms apply. We got Dave Pagnotta, by the way, in about 25 minutes or so to break down the very latest on the trade front for the Maple Leafs. But some news and notes from practice. David Kampf didn't skate yesterday due to illness. He's a game-time decision. He was on the ice for the morning skate. Of course, optional these days, but that's good news.
Yeah, and going into this point of the season, it's game 60 to 80 just gets so hard to fight for space. Goals are tough to come by. Power plays are tough to come by, and there's going to be bumps and bruises. So, for him, he's had not the best season, only 11 points in the 57 games that he's played. But you need bodies at this point of the year. So where does he fit? I'm not sure. Is he probably fourth line most likely? But there's a lot of guys in the running in that bottom six that are playing at a pretty decent level of hockey at this point too. So for this team to make a run, I would like to see them even add another depth forward on Friday's deadline too, but he's just another piece of the puzzle that when he's there skating, playing good hockey, he's a big productive member of this club. You need depth guys. He's a piece that can, help for this run.
What's your feel about the deadline? Like, I know we just talked about it from the player's perspective, but from the Leafs perspective, I can't believe it has been a year since I created this phenomenal shirt, by the way, but also since Kyle Dubas blew his brains out, acquired 10 different players. And it's funny we say that because earlier today, Rasmus Sandin, who they traded to Washington last year for the first round pick, and Eric Gustafsson, signs a 5-year extension at 4.6 sheets per season. What do you make of that? It's quite a bit of dough, eh? Good for him.
That's Sandin. But again, that's a guy that, he's going to be a blossoming, offensive guy. Sometimes it takes time. He's still only 23 years old. He's turning 24, actually next week. But again, he's a guy that is, eating up some minutes. And a Washington Capitals team, their offense hasn't been there that year. Some guys are struggling. He's a guy that eats up minutes. So he's a top 4 defenseman. You're going to have to pay a going rate. They're probably buying a couple of years where they can see he can probably exceed that number. So is it a little high? I think so to start off, but I think, in the final year or two, you can see that being a good value contract, because when he's skating, moving the puck, getting pucks out, he's a very productive guy. He's had spurts of that with Toronto. He hasn't been consistent, but it's tough. He's only 200 games in the league. I want to see where he's going to be at 350, 375, and I think you're going to see exactly where he's at, and I'm sure he'll be worth that ticket that he just signed.
The big thing now is like paying for projection, right? What a guy's going to do down the road. I know to an extent the Ottawa Senators did that the last couple of years. Is it working out in their benefit? I'm not sure. I think that's something I could stomach at 4.6 because the salary cap is going up. But I always like to think, like, if the Leafs signed Sandin last year, it wouldn't have been that last year. But if, let's say, they had Sandin right now and they signed him to that extension, people would be going nuts, no?
Would you rather him or would you rather Klingberg at 4.5?
Yeah, but that's not a fair comparison because they got 1 year of Klingberg. And
okay, but he's young. He's again, but I'm telling you, if he was here in this market, he'd probably be an 8 in 25 guy, 32 points. And again, a young guy you want to lock in. I think for potential, I think they gave up on him a little bit early, but again, they have different aspirations right now. They're not necessarily in developing young defensemen. We're seeing the growing pains Liljegren's going through right now as of late. I think it was too tough to try to develop 2 guys, so they had to make a decision on one, and they ended up going with Liljegren. But again, I think he's, you don't turn into a first rounder by accident. I think it's just putting him on the right development curve. And, he's been consistent at 15, 20 points the last 3 years. I could see him getting to 30, 40 range as he develops. So yes, there's some defensive warts in the D zone, but again, how many guys have gone on to greener pastures once they left the Maple Leafs? Hyman, Mikheyev, Trevor Moore's got 22 goals. Barabanov's fetching a second rounder at the deadline. The list goes on, the list goes on, the list goes on. So again, I think in 2 years, I think the conversation is going to be, man, imagine if we had Sandin running the peeper and being a second line, second pairing defenseman.
I'm going to respectfully decline that because you know who they got with that first round pick?
Who'd they get?
Easton Cowan, who's on, I think he's got 78 games in a row with a point.
But what about now? Well, I remember mentioning this specifically to you. Justin Hall is one of those players that you'll know exactly what you're missing. And what's the talk been right now with Maple Leafs? Maybe we should go out and get
that's
Justin Hall.
Real. Stu, are you kidding me? That is not a real conversation.
Someone made that up? That's fake news?
No, they were being sarcastic on 32 Thoughts, and all of a sudden I saw it across my Twitter feed. They're not getting Justin Hall back. Are you kidding me?
At retention, I heard. Right, but my point is, though, like, again, Sandin is that player, and in a year or two, it's like, oh, man, we really wish we had a guy that's 25, 26 that can run the power play, right? So we'll see.
People are saying you're straight trolling in the chat. There's no way on God's green earth they're going back.
Go on X. Find me on X at Golden Muzzy. It's my handle. Send all gripes there, please.
Dude, if Justin Hall comes back, somehow finds his way back to Toronto, I am quitting this show. I'm not doing it. I'm done.
They had to go out. What were they missing? They had to get up and call up Benoit. They had Lagesson. They went out and got Labushkin. Is that not Justin Hall? Not at $2.5 or $3.5 million, but at $1.5 million, right?
Look, man, I suffered through the Martin Marincin era. I do not need to see Justin Hall back in a Maple Leafs uniform. Okay. Like, if we're at a point where Justin Hall is going to be the pendulum swinger for the Toronto Maple Leafs, no thanks. I'll take the first round exit. We'll reconvene at the Sphere in Vegas.
Yeah, let's get Kerfoot too. Let's get him there. That's what Vic mentioned. Get Kerfoot.
I knew he was scoring too. I knew Kerfoot was scoring. I had him at plus 450 last week. We got to move on. This is going off the rails. I ain't talking about Justin Hall. I love that signing by Stevie Y. Like 3 games in, he's a health bomb, back eating popcorn in the press box. Again, he always takes stray bullets, does Justin Hall. I think you got to credit his agent first and foremost. He's done a masterful job. Dude, you know what I want to see? Noah Gregor. Like, where is that cat? He's been a health bomb 6 straight games, 7 of the past 8. I happen to think he's got a lot to give to this team.
Yeah, but, you're looking at the lineup, right now, and you have that competition for ice, and you're looking at McMahon right now, who's slowed down his last 5 games, but he's got 4 goals and 7 points in his last 10 games. You're seeing Ryan Reeves now, he's got 2 points his last 10 games, but adding that truculence and getting pucks out, getting it on the forecheck. And, Holmberg's come out and played some good hockey as well, too. So I think for him, he's just got to continue to stay ready, wait for his opportunity. But it's a good problem to have. At this point of the year, you want to have that competition. And you see a guy like Nick Robertson get squeezed out due to some cap restraints, and he had to go down to the minors. But that's a good problem to have when you have 4 or 5 guys in competition for 2-3 spots. So for him, he's just got to wait his opportunity. 11 points this year. He brings a lot of speed to that bottom 6, but with McMahon earning his opportunity, Reeves coming in, playing great hockey since he's come back from his injury. We know Camp's a center, and Holmberg, I think for him, it's just more so of a timing issue.
I really like that point because I love the idea of internal competition, and that phrase has been used in abundance of times by Sheldon Keefe and other coaches around the league. And it's just amazing to me, like a month ago, we were talking about the lack of depth, and it was always the core 4. Now, all of a sudden, guys are playing too good. And a guy like Noah Gregor, who's had a pretty damn good season, can't find himself back in the lineup. Ditto for Nick Robertson. Like, I think it's a good, as you mentioned, a good problem to have. I just want people pushing each other outside of the core players, right?
Yeah, and you're thinking about game 7 of round 2, and the top 6, they're just badgered and they're getting beat up, bruised and battered. You need those middle 6 and bottom 6 guys to step in and scoring that big goal. And you're seeing Tavares right now being the third line center. He's probably not going to be getting that tough looks against other teams' top lines, so he can score. I could see McMahon, him down low. How great has he been coming out of the corner, crashing the net? When's the last time the Leafs had a bottom 6 winger that can do that? And Holmberg with his speed as well too. So I think that's what's been missing. Guys that are productive members, but can have a legitimate role. In years past, the bottom 6 was they called T.R. Goodman used to say Jags. Are you just a Jag? Just another guy? These guys aren't Jags. These guys are out there that are making the most, whether they're playing 8 minutes, 12 minutes, or 13. They're making the most of it, and you're noticing these guys. You're noticing these lines. In years past, you're like, man, these guys are clock killers. When's Nylander and Matthews line getting back out there now? But these guys now, they're when they're not scoring, they're getting it on the forecheck. They're playing with some truculence. They're making it difficult for the other team's defense. They're making plays. When's the last time you've seen the bottom 6 consistently make plays and sustain puck possession in the other team's zone? So again, for them, those are those things that don't necessarily factor into goals and assists, but I think for wins for the club. And I think that's the main reason why they've had success in these last 20 games. Everybody's getting involved, not just the Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner show.
Yeah, I've been saying for a long time, the Leafs are a different team when they can hit on all 4 times consistently. And I think that fourth line right now deserves a lot of credit. And I'd love for you to speak to Revo specifically, because like 2 months ago, this guy went from unplayable to a mainstay in the lineup. Like, I think this has been obviously one of the very positive stories to this team the last couple months, along with Ilya Samsonov, who, by the way, is a confirmed starter for this game against the Buffalo Sabres. But the fourth line has put together a bit of an identity, and they've put forth some consistent efforts lately.
Yeah, they have. And again, I went and did a presentation for the Maple Leafs. I think it was in November, and I think it was around the first time he got healthy scratched. And just talking to him, like, I think he was just overwhelmed with the market. I don't think people understand what this market is until you're actually living it, right? It's different when you're coming on the road and the media is there, but when they're in your face every single day, scrutinizing and celebrating every single little play, there's a lot of highs and there's a lot of low lows as well too. So I caught him on the low where I said, hey man, like, welcome to Toronto. You just got to find a way to power through it. And again, I think that injury was probably the best thing that could happen to him, because he can hit a reset button, watch from up top, just work his way back into and see exactly what he needs to do to be successful. And when he a lot of those minuses he caught early on in the season, that was bad luck. And I think it was just piling and snowballing into effect where he's just like, man, I need this reset. So him coming back in, I think he had the opportunity to watch and see exactly what he needs to do. And he's come in and done it. He's fought when he's needed to fight. He's getting pucks in deep. He's getting pucks out, most importantly, and he's making a play, right? And when he goes to the net and the puck's on his stick, he can find a way to get it in the net or put it on that and make plays. So I think for him, just simplifying it, I think he wanted to come in and be too many things at once. But once he simplified it and focused on one thing at a time, I think that's why you're having and seeing his success right now.
I think that's bang on, because not to assess his game for him and speak for him, but like the first couple games, it just felt like he was just trying to fight everybody. Arbor Jackeye, Marcus Foligno scraps his first 2 games and just really loses sight of actually playing.
Right?
Yeah, like I thought he lost sight of playing hockey, and the last couple games he's proven and shown why again, it's still a pricey contract, but why he actually was brought in here. He can actually play a bit of hockey when playing his game and playing with the right players in the fourth line. And to me, that's been a developing story. And he can fight. I mean, he fought the new flavor of the week in Matt Rempe. I'm sure he's going to fight Arbor Jacki coming up on Saturday of the Montreal Canadiens. Like, there's a reason why you get a guy like Ryan Reeves, and I think he's found his identity as a Maple Leaf, and that's really, really good news. Also good news, Connor Timmins cleared for contact after a bout, with mono. I still wonder if there's any chance this guy factors in down the stretch into the Stanley Cup playoffs, because this time last year, he was the talk of the town, making strides. What an addition by Kyle Dubas, but he's lost all his confidence again, and unfortunately not in the good graces of the coaches before he got the mono too.
Yeah, it just seems like, when he's about to get over the hump, he'll put up, 3 points in 5 games or 6 points in 8 games. And then he's ready to step in and run a peeper. He either gets hurt or something happens. So I think for him, a lot of his fate has been chalked up just to bad luck. But, you've seen some other guys come in and essentially pass him, as the season's gone along, in Benoit and Lagesson, and they now just traded for Labushkin. So I think for him, it's just a numbers game at this point too, but it's been that case now for the last, couple seasons. So I'm not saying he fell out of favor with the coaching staff, but again, other guys have just come in and earned and taken his job. And that's the way the National Hockey League works. So he's on the outside looking in, but we've heard others in this market talk about, to win a Stanley Cup, you need 7, 8, 9 defensemen. I'm sure they're going to add another one at the deadline. He's just got to stay ready. Or, he can be a guy that can be a piece, right? We've known he can probably play a 0.35 or a 4 point, close to half a point a game clip. But I think for him, it's just staying healthy, staying consistent. He's got to put a good group of games together, but that's been the case. Once he's at game 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, there's either an injury mixed in there, a big pizza delivery, or a bad game. So I think that consistency, he hasn't been consistent. I think that's been his issue with his tour of Toronto at this time.
It will be interesting to see, like, the depth chart when it comes to the blue line, how many blue liners they have for rest of season purposes and into the Stanley Cup playoffs, because another guy thrown into the fire is Mark Giordano, suffered the concussion on February 29th, so a week ago against Arizona, and back on the ice for the morning skate skating. He's not going to play. There's no timetable, but, like, you talk about depth. You can never have enough depth in the Stanley Cup playoffs, especially a seasoned pro like Giordano. But I think we can both agree we have this convo right now in tomorrow's game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Giordano, assuming, again, they pick up at least one more guy, he's not going to be in the starting lineup, is he?
We're talking about Timmins, right?
No, we're talking about Gio now.
Gio. Well, again, he's how many? Do we have a timeline? Sorry, on when his return is?
So I was just mentioning how he's back on the ice skating, and there's no timetable, though. He's back skating.
Yeah,
now.
So again, for him, and again, I think with Gio, again, he's given a lot of minutes, a lot of hard minutes, and a lot of the time he was sort of playing above his minute grade, right? Where he was, he's more so at this point, maybe a 13 to 15 minute guy, but he's expected to play 19, 20, sometimes during that lull when they were down some D, 20 minutes plus. So for him, yeah, I could see him being on the outside looking in. But again, going back to what we were talking about, you're going to need 7, 8, 9 to win a Stanley Cup. You're going to need some luck. You're going to have to stay healthy. Your special teams are going to have to be special, but he's a warrior type guy too. So that's another guy that just has to wait for his opportunity to get in. But if they're going 4 rounds this year, you have not seen the last of Mark Giordano. That's a fact.
Yeah, I can agree with that sentiment for sure. And by the way, Sheldon Keefe saying a short time ago that the flu bug is going through the room again. So a lot of game time decisions, including David Kampf, as mentioned, dealing with the flu yesterday, back for the morning skate. So we'll see who does, in fact, play for this game against the Buffalo Sabres. Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy teams this year and daily face-off. For those of you who smoke the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you winning despite your lack of team building skills. Download the Wendy's app. Score yourself 150 bonus reward points on your first order and grab a sweet victory from the mouth-watering jaws of defeat, along with some fresh, never frozen beef. Sign up to play daily face-off to win weekly prizes like the spicy chicken sandwich from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. Do you remember that 9-3 loss to Buffalo in December?
Nope. And I'm sure the players don't either. And that's
where it
goes. Right. I know they've learned a lot of lessons of late, but I don't think they remember that 9-3 loss because, again, it's Was there some injuries at that point? I'm trying to think. Was the power play not clicking at that point? I don't remember. But as a group, you sort of got to keep your foot forward. This is a different group than it was in December. They have a lot more guys contributing. The lineup is the lines are shuffled a little bit differently. Who was in net, right? They now have a two-headed monster that they had probably at the beginning of the year that they sort of lost during the midseason. That's back now. So this is a completely different team. So if I'm that group, I'm not sitting there dwelling on, hey, we lost 9-3. We better come out and have a big game. They just have to continue to do those things that have made them successful. And that's all four lines getting involved, playing the right way. They've been playing on the right side of the puck. They've been paying attention to details in the D zone, minus that Boston game. But again, it's an all-around different and better team than they were in December. I think that's a fact.
Would Sheldon Keefe show that in the pre-scout, like some of the video of that game, what transpired, or do you park it? Do you move on?
I think you park it, right? Because again, my messaging would be is, at this point, what is the Buffalo Sabres goal? They're probably out of the mix for the Stanley Cup playoffs right now. So they're coming in, they're going to play spoilers, right? So they're sitting right now, 10 points out. They're probably out of it. They've been playing okay hockey, 5-2 loss versus Winnipeg, 3-2 loss against Florida in their last 5 games. I think for them, it's not about what the Buffalo Sabres are bringing to the table. Yes, you got to be careful of some of their top line players, Skin, Tuck, some of these guys, but play our game. We're going to be successful. But I'm not sitting there saying, well, look at this pizza we threw up the middle or this undisciplined play that we did in the third period there. Focus on what we can control. And this should be a game that's done, halfway through the game.
What was your view, your vantage point of the game against Boston? Because we came on here yesterday and obviously gauging social media after that game, a lot of people were like, the sky's falling, and we couldn't believe it, considering the Leafs had won 9 of 10 and 13 of 16 heading into that game. I think, again, personally, they were triggered by it being the Boston Bruins, and the Bruins almost did the exact same thing to the Oilers before the Oilers found life late in that game and then winning in OT last night. But did you come away from that Bruins game thinking like, wow, this Leafs team didn't show up, or do you think the effort was there?
I think it was just Boston executing their game plan, right? And if I'm Toronto, you could see that they probably weren't prepared to go based on the breakaway they gave up 10 seconds into the game, right? So I think for Boston, they know the MO against Toronto is you got to get pucks below the dots, and they really have a tough time recovering from the corner to the middle. So you can get them with these little slot plays. They lose coverage sometimes in their D zone. And they just came in and owned the walls and made plays and played sort of like a ground and pound type of game of hockey. And at the end of the day, Pasternak had an amazing game, 3 assists. He was schooling guys, but he was making plays as well too. But I think Toronto, they have to play almost close to a perfect game or for a full 60 minutes against the Bostons, the Floridas, and the New York Rangers. So for them, yeah, they came on near the end of the second period. I saw they had a couple slot chances too, but it just seemed Swayman was locked in. They scored the goal by Tavares, but again, it just wasn't close because Boston stuck to the game plan for a full 60 minutes. So I think for them, if they learned anything, that's something you can't bring it every single night. You got to at least play those basics and play that system, and they got away from that, and I think that's why they lost that game. It wasn't anything spectacular that Boston did. They didn't take them to school, and their depth killed them. It was they just stuck to the system and waited for their opportunities and made the most of it.
Dude, that phrase "learning lesson" does trigger me. I don't know if you caught this, but John Tavares.
I
know.
We learned today. We learned. Well, you're gonna learn. You're gonna keep learning. You get a PhD by now.
Like, what are you learning, John? Like, I get he's the captain, and I get he's trying to say the right things, but like, just take that out of your vernacular, man. I do not. What are they learning? It's been 7 years of the same bullshit with this team. Can you explain that for me, Stewie?
What else do you want them to say, right? I remember being a player and I was not as, close to being as articulate as I am now. You just sort of want to, you're more so not worried about saying the right thing. You just don't want to say the wrong thing. So I think for them, it's just, yeah, we learned, we got to be better. I don't think they're giving any tells on exactly what they're thinking or what needs to be done. So I think that's the simple thing to say, hey, you know what, we learned, we're going to be better next time. But that's what's frustrating with the group is because they've been saying that for the last 2-3 years. They haven't learned, right? So if I'm the Leafs, I need to find a way to come out on time, have specialty teams be special, make it harder to play against. It just seemed like Boston had their way with them down low, below the dots, and play a little bit harder. But this team has been on a high for the last month since the Ridley Gregg gate. and there's going to be some dips. So again, I'm not really ready to assess them. I want to see how they're going to do the next 2-3 games and how they respond to an effort that they didn't really bring their A game.
Stu, I know we've had some pretty fun guests over the last couple of years on this show. You need to find me the person who was in charge of social media in Oshawa when John Tavares was there. And I know the person in London who was there for 3 months. A learning lesson had to be the number one thing they taught there, because that's the only thing he says every time they lose a game when they shouldn't, or lose in an important time. We're going to learn from it.
But what if he was on the air and said, well, guys, I'm struggling because you guys are on my back and I can't even have an off game, or now I'm on the third line. You guys are busting my chops about that. That's probably what he really wants to say, but that's just going to create a whole other headline that we don't need. It's going to be JT versus the media. And I think for him, that's just his coping mechanism, saying, hey, I got to learn. We're going to do some more learning.
No, all you have to say, it's not good enough. That's it.
Yeah, but then now you're in trouble with your coach. You're saying it's not good enough. So what are you going to do about it? So for them, it's just being as vanilla as possible, being on not either side of the ledger, just coming in, he did that interview as if he couldn't wait to hit the showers. So, and again, there's nothing wrong with them. I see that as a coping mechanism and a crutch. So they're not all media trained like you and I, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say
you want full on Paul Maurice to go in and, when we look at depth of the third line and, our Corsi stats or this and that, we got to do this. Do you want to hear that from him? Probably not.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't know. I'm so tired of the same shit from this team. I don't doubt some guys already.
You're going to be the first one at the parade dancing, no shirt on. You're
actually, I didn't even go to the Raptors parade.
Of the parade. Like, what are you talking about?
When's this parade?
I don't know. On the 35th of February, but it's coming soon.
That's a Stewieism if I've ever heard one. I need a power play goal tonight, man. 0 for the last 9 over the last 4. Would you make any tweaks, any changes? Are you riding consistent with Bertuzzi on there?
I like it. I like it because, he gets to the dirty areas. He's not afraid to go backdoor or behind the net and make some plays, but really crash that net. So once you have that guy, that's that threat that's in the slot to crash the net, it could really open up the points, which now can create an opportunity on the flank or a cross seam play. So I think he adds that element where JT was more so of a bumper guy. He's the guy that crashes that net. So I'd like to see a little bit now with him in there crashing that net, being a little bit more shot oriented and shooting for sticks and shooting for rebounds and shooting for redirects. But again, he's been great. And I think for that, it's more so how do you find a way to get him going? And since he's been on there, he's playing some great hockey. 6 goals his last 10 games. I'm not sure how many of those which were power play, but the goal is you're going to need him to make an extended run. He's kicking right now. You ride him until he goes on a little bit of a slump, but he's been great so far.
What do you make of Sammy going tonight? And I would assume Joseph Woll again against Boston again here.
Yeah, there was some discussion if Sammy should have went last game, right? But for them, it's, again, I think they're just trying to get his tests out early with Woll and saying, hey, you know what? We expect you to maybe be the guy. So, hey, we're going to give you some tough tests to see how you handle it. But I think it's a good problem to have, as Samsonov has been playing great. I think he's earned the crease as of late. But I do understand that they're trying to find a way to get Woll going. But I think when it's all said and done, I think it's going to be a two-headed monster. I'm not sure it's just going to be one guy. And remember, Joseph Woll, he was playing great before that injury, but could you appoint him and anoint him that number one goalie at that time? He was very, very close to being that number one, but I don't think you can flat out say he has now emerged and has arrived as a number one goaltender. So I think they're still going to push for that, and giving him some tough tests early, I think, is going to help get him back up to form and see if he really has it in him this second time around.
Yeah, we'll see if he has it in him tonight, because again, the last time he played Buffalo, he got torched, he got pulled, and it was pretty much the beginning of the end. He was put on waivers after that. We all know the story after, but it's like every time Buffalo and Toronto get together, there's always chaos.
I forgot. I don't remember. The players don't remember.
I remember.
I guess it's our job to remember. But that is a crutch or a coping mechanism within the National Hockey League and the players. You have to have a short memory, right? If they won that game 9-3, can they come into this game saying, guys, it's easy peasy here. We pumped these guys 9-3 in December. Let's just do the exact same thing. No. You have to now focus on the task that's at hand, focus on the things that make you successful, and try to get those things out of your game that are making you unsuccessful. So whether it's Boston or Buffalo at this point of the year, I think it doesn't matter the opponent. It's just focusing on the things that they continue to make them successful. And I think it's just another game. They're not sitting here circling this on the calendar saying, we got to avenge this loss, $20,000 on the board, guys, let's go. I don't think it's just they're treating it as another game because, again, they have to focus on, hitting a high riding into the playoffs.
Flawed logic, man, because you're telling me Leon Draisaitl, who scored like 21 goals in 21 games against Nashville, was like, I don't remember the last time I played the Predators. Doubt it.
No, probably not. I'm telling you.
Right.
Hey, I'm just giving you the thinking of how guys are, right? But I remember playing with Stahl, and I would go to him, hey, you had success against Florida here, big point night, and he'd look at me like, don't say that, like, don't jinx it. But I'm not. That's just another game, Stu. And I just like, okay, and I go shrivel back into the corner. So the star guys and some of these top guys, again, they don't have that mentality. It's game 60, and guys are miserable right now because there's a bunch of games coming up in a short period of time. They got bumps, they got bruises. They got to deal with practice and video. This time in February, March is a really miserable time before you get to that final push. So guys are moody. I don't think they're worried about milestones. They're worried about just staying healthy, getting through the trade deadline, and, getting that final push towards the playoffs.
I'm very moody too, as I await Dave Pagnotta's arrival on this podcast. He is coming, by the way, but I won't lie. I'm scared about this game. I think it's a trap game. I think you look at recent memory, and we hate doing that. Of course, you hate doing that, but the last 7 with Buffalo and Toronto have hit the over 6.5. The first 2 this year, 6-4 Buffalo November 4th, 9-3 Buffalo December 21st. The Sabres have won 3 straight meetings. Traditionally, in the last little while, the Leafs have not played Buffalo well. I want to see a tight checking, low scoring 2-1 hockey game. I just know it's not going to happen, unfortunately.
I'm going to go the opposite. I'm expecting a 6-5 game, so I think it's going to be a 2-1 game, right? And again, it's so I think for them, I think Toronto has to tighten up their game from Boston. I'm sure there was a lot of things they didn't like to do in the defensive zone, so they're going to iron that out with some video of them. I'm focusing on that video from Boston because a lot of it was lost coverage on a lot of those goals, or not really, being set in the D zone. So I think they probably had a good practice day and focused on those details in video, and I could see them really coming out and really hammering it home. So I could see them letting in less than 2 goals, and we'll see how the offense and the power play clicks as of late. But again, I don't expect them to be letting in 4 or 5 goals against the Buffalo Sabres.
I would anticipate Pagnotta being a bit late because of some news on social media. Elliot Friedman saying that talks between Ottawa and Florida regarding Vladimir Tarasenko are intensifying. We'll see where it goes. And anybody who knows Elliot Friedman, when he says we'll see where it goes, it's going to happen. By the way, Elliot Friedman's dropping by this podcast tomorrow to dish on the Maple Leafs. So he's coming up on tomorrow's show. You won't want to miss that one either as you get closer to the deadline. But man, watching Florida last night, they're in a league of their own, dude. For me, it's Florida, everybody else. They're that good, and now you potentially added Tarasenko. That is scary. That guy's a dog.
Ooh, and then you got our friend Reinhart, flirting with 50 goals, sitting second in the league right now too. But this team is just, you see Barkov's goal assist the other night too. They just seem like they are rolling. So this is a group now that has 4 lines that are contributing. They have depth on D, and even the games sometimes where Bobrovsky's letting in a muffin, they are playing some good hockey, and Stolarz is coming in and shutting the door as well. So it's a good group. They are the team to beat in the East, and if they now add some more pieces to the puzzles and Tarasenko and another D, woo. I wouldn't want to be playing them in any round, let alone the first round.
Yeah, they're a very scary team with tons of depth, and I think your only hope is that they maybe add too much or add, the wrong piece, and it just doesn't work out. But the way Florida's playing right now is very, very scary as you bring in today's guest from the Fourth Period NHL Network and, of course, SiriusXM NHL Network Radio. It is David Pagnotta. What's going on, Dave?
What's going on, boys? How we doing?
Good. We're just discussing the potential Tarasenko deal, and I just think watching Florida, they're a really, really scary team. But do you expect teams in the Atlantic to react off what teams like Florida do?
Yeah, without question. I mean, this is, there's a domino effect. Everybody kind of feeds off each other and trying to see who can outdo the other, one up the other. Florida's got a lot of cap space and they've been in on obviously Tarasenko, and he's willing to waive his no trade to go there. We reported that a couple weeks ago. Anthony Duclair they've checked in on, and a few other pieces, Gensel as well. But it seems like obviously there's been some traction going into last night with respect to Ottawa and Tarasenko, and clearly his willingness to go there. He's got an off-season home in Fort Lauderdale. It's an easy fit for him. Really, this was more juggling on Florida's side to determine whether or not he's a good fit and where he would slot into this lineup. We saw what happened with the Rangers. You add some pieces. Just because they're the best pieces that may be available doesn't necessarily mean they're the right pieces for your team. And that's what Florida and Billy Zito have been trying to figure out and analyze here over the last, I'd say, 48 hours or so, 72, maybe even a little beyond that. But talks intensified last night. They've gone into this morning, and it looks like it's getting there.
Well, we all know that all roads lead to Toronto, especially on this program too. So what are your expectations for the deadline for the Leafs on Friday here? Are they going to make a big splash, or just some minor tinkering and make their bigger moves in the offseason?
Honestly, Stewie, they can go in either direction. It's not a cop-out answer. It's just there's a blanket across their options right now. And they continue to check in on, I know Parayko's now the hot topic. We mentioned this a few weeks ago. But that's picked up clearly. Sean Walker is still an option for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They continue to circle back and check in on his availability with Philadelphia. Is it that caliber, those kinds of players? I mean, obviously Walker's expiring. Parayko's got 6 more years on his contract. That would take a lot more with the $6.5 million cap hit. That would be obviously a lot more significant of a deal for the Maple Leafs to kind of complete if they go in that direction. But there's a lot of interest. I mean, if they don't want to do that now, they can certainly circle and focus on guys on expiring deals. So Nick Seeler is close to an extension with Philadelphia. They're still at this hour, and just look at the clock, they're still hammering out. There's 2 options on the table, a 3 and a 4-year deal. Sealer's camp wants 4 years. The Flyers are hoping to get 3. I think this hovers around $3.5 million wherever it ends up. But they've intensified those talks, and there's been nothing with Sean Walker's camp since I think Friday. So as the Leafs and Oilers and a few other teams circle back, that could be an option they focus in on. But Philly's pushing for a first-round pick. I don't know if the Leafs want to do that for a rental piece at this stage. So they may look and try to bargain hunt. But look, honestly, Tree and everybody else are looking at all their options right now. It's still too early to determine if it's this direction or that direction for the Leafs, again, because they're trying to keep their options wide open right now.
Dave, am I missing something with this year's deadline? And maybe it's the lack of sexiness with the names, but are we really mulling over Sean Walker and Nick Seeler for potential high draft picks? Is that where we're at, where these guys are going to be difference? Are you telling me that Sean Walker's going to go somewhere and be a difference maker for a team?
He's having a hell of a season, Nick, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it's convenient because it's, and your favorite, contract year. But this is, he's really, genuinely, he's having a good year at both ends. And looking at his numbers and then trying to take the analytics of his game and the analytics of how contracts are now being reviewed. He wants a 5-year extension in Philly, and talking to some teams around the league, it's not a crazy ask to look at a 5-year extension for Sean Walker based on how he's playing. Because of how he's playing, and Philly, by the way, they want a 4-year deal. So, but again, nothing since Friday. But because of the season he's having, Philly's going, all right, well, Tanev's off the market. Walker's better than Dumba overall. So we can justify asking for a first-round pick. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get it. And would they consider, 2 seconds, a second of a top prospect or whatnot? I think there'd be some consideration there. But then at the same time, is money coming back? From Edmonton's perspective, Cody Ceci is a guy that they offered in a trade with a first-round pick to Calgary for Tanev. That didn't happen. I think that's on the table for Philadelphia, and he's got another year on his deal. So do you offset that if you're Edmonton and you justify giving up a first-round pick if it moving out of contract and you get money off the books next year? That's something that has to be considered from their perspective, and Philly's trying to take advantage of that.
There's been some reports yesterday about Lindholm maybe possibly going from Calgary to Vancouver to Boston. Do you see that happening? And if he does end up somewhere else, is Boston the number 1 contender?
Well, Boston liked him before he was traded to Vancouver, but they wanted an extension in place. And he was doing decently. He was having an off year before he got to Vancouver. But before the season started, he wanted $9 million on an extension. Based on his performance this season, especially with Vancouver since joining the Canucks, I think it's a little difficult to make that argument that he's worth that money based on his season this year. Now, if you want to put that aside and look at what he's done in the past, I think he's still one of the most underrated two-way centers in the National Hockey League. But Boston, I'm very curious if they still want an extension tied to him if they get him. Like, that's the contingency. That was the fact before he was traded to Vancouver. Not only that, they have no cap space. So if they bring in Lindholm or somebody of a decent enough cap hit, they're going to have to move somebody out, which explains why they've been dangling Jake DeBrusk the last few weeks. He's got a $4 million cap hit. He's on an expiring deal. He's had an up and down kind of season, although he had a hell of a game against the Leafs the other night. He's out there. So if Boston makes a big move, he's a prime candidate to get dished out. So if it does happen here, first of all, these talks picked up over the weekend and it kind of carried out. I'm still not 100% sure that there's much runway on this because there are other teams that are really pushing for Jake Gensel. The Rangers and Edmonton, I'm told, are very much interested in Jake Gensel. And the Rangers, I mean, you got a first round pick available that they're in a sense willing to move. Like, I know there were reports that they don't want to do it because they're at the Sphere and, Jimmy D owns the place and all that stuff. But if you get an opportunity to go get Gensel, I think, and chase a cup, I think that might convince them. And they also have Kako Capo available. Would those two pieces be enough for Pittsburgh to say, all right, we'll pull this off? Because they want 3 assets. But you get Capo, you get a first-round pick out of this. I think that would make Kyle Dubas go, I might not be able to pass that up. That might be one of the better offers on the table.
Yeah, and this is a big-time deal for Kyle Dubas to put together here ahead of the trade deadline for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Speaking of Kyle Dubas, Nick Robertson, a lot of teams, a lot of contenders, money in, money out type situations. What are you hearing on Nick Robertson? This guy getting traded?
If he is, it's a bigger type of deal. They've been adamant telling teams they don't want to trade Fraser Minton, they don't want to trade Easton Cowan. Ryan Teverberg's name, I keep messing that up all the time. His name is kind of out there. The kid on the blue line, whose other name I totally meant, the Finnish kid.
Yamala?
Some teams have asked about him. But Robertson seems to be, based on how he's played this season, a piece that they're willing to dangle, but not from a rental perspective. This would be a guy with term or somebody controllable. So whether that's, hypothetically speaking, part of a Parayko deal, which would be larger, or again, somebody with term who's controllable. If Robertson is moved in any way, I think it's very likely to be that type of deal and not a rental situation.
This has been the year where I don't think I've seen this many contenders, especially in the Western Conference. Yeah. So time to put your GM hat. What's the one player that's going to put the one team over the top this year to win the Stanley Cup? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, full transparency, I picked Dallas to win the Cup at the start of the season. I'm more confident now that they brought in Chris Tanev on that back end. I don't think Dallas is done. I think they make maybe a depth type move. But I really, they wanted to bring in somebody with physicality, who's rugged, who's experienced on that back end. I really like the Tanev addition. And it's those subtle type of, quasi-subtle, but those kinds of moves that really push championship teams over the edge. You add that extra piece. It's not necessarily the sexiest, flashiest kind of player, but that really puts you over the top. Like Vegas last year, they brought in Ivan Barbashev. I love that move because of all the intangibles he brings. He brought that for Vegas. It's those types of moves that usually just stabilize a team, a cup contender's roster. Like Florida right now, with the likelihood that they're getting Tarasenko now, I like that move in a sense that it's not, they're not augmenting their first line. This isn't getting Tarasenko to be in the first line. This is getting secondary scoring, and he'll probably play mid 6 minutes. So either interchangeable between the second line or the third line. And that's probably where he is at this state of his career. And you just max out that roster. Like it's a sexy name because he's been around, but not necessarily that the player himself in terms of what they bring to the table. Out west, again, I like the Tanev move. I really do. I think Vancouver maybe doing a little too much if they can pull this off. I'm worried about that. I like the Zadorov move. I like that, bringing that physicality on the back end. But I don't know about Vancouver just yet. Again, I like the Tanev move. And it would, for Edmonton, it would have to be multiple pieces that they bring in if it puts them over the top. I don't think one guy is going to really tip it for them come playoff time. So I guess I'll stick with Dallas.
Couple quick hitters for you on the Leafs front. Some names to bring up. When you look at San Jose, I think you've been saying for a while that the Leafs might be looking for a combo of a forward and a D, something I think they looked at with the Calgary Flames. But with San Jose, Luke Cunnin and Mario Ferraro and David Savard, I'm surprised his name's not out there more.
Yeah, sorry, guys. So the trade is done.
Tarasenko?
Yeah. It's that trade call is going through, I guess, any minute. You were talking about San Jose, right?
Yeah, so just a San Jose, no worries. A San Jose front with Cunnin and Ferraro, and then David Savard with Montreal. Why aren't those names? Are those names out there as options for the Leafs?
Yeah, they are. I mean, those are a couple players like Ferraro get term, so there's 2 more years left on his contract, and Cunnin, he's controllable. He's a restricted free agent at the end of the season. There are some arb breaks there. Talking to some people in San Jose, he thinks there's a possibility he could go, and he's aware, from my understanding, teams like Toronto and Edmonton and a few others have been poking around. And he's got a pretty affordable cap hit. And this is a caliber player in like he brings physicality and he can keep up with the pace of play. He can contribute, provide secondary or tertiary scoring, and he brings that physicality, that balls to the wall kind of I'll run myself through the boards for you kind of player that we know, especially this team, could use. So I think there's definite interest there. And again, controllable asset because he's an RFA. And Ferraro is a guy that they've checked in on since the start of the season. The Leafs have. That could be a nice little, potential fit there. But this is a bigger type of deal. You're talking about guys with term. So this is where a Robertson potentially comes into play, likely your first round pick. Like these are impact type of moves that apply not just this season, but next season and potentially much further down the road as well. Like these are the intangible type of assets that championship teams bring in. And I'm not comparing the two, but a trade that Los Angeles made a while back before they got to their cup run, they brought in Matt Green and Jarrett Stoll from Edmonton. And those are intangible caliber pieces that different kinds of players overall. But you bring in those extra intangibles, you bring more physicality, more responsible play. That's kind of what Cunnin and Ferraro would bring to either the Leafs or any other team. So I would almost draw a comparison there in terms of what the assets bring to the table and what they mean to a championship team moving forward.
Looking forward to see what happens, Dave, over the next couple of days. Appreciate your time here. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, boys.
Anytime. That's Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period, and, of course, the news of the Tarasenko trade breaking with Dave on the show with us. That's big, man. You add Tarasenko to that Florida roster. It sounds like 2 draft picks going the other way, and the trade call, as Dave mentioned, is going through. I'm curious to see the response by other teams now in the Atlantic Division after they pulled that off.
Yeah, that's crazy. He's a legitimate top 6 forward. And he struggled a little bit offensively this year. But again, he's one of those guys when motivated can put up some big numbers too. So again, I like it now because there's going to be a domino effect now where the Bostons, what are they going to do? What are the Rangers going to do? What are the Leafs going to do? And maybe some of those teams in the West. So again, it's going to make for a good Friday, but I think there's going to be some moves happening now between now and then. So, you're looking at some of the depth that Florida already has to add Tarasenko. He's a blue chip guy that's going to come in. And again, he's one of those guys that trains really, really hard down there at Pete Bomarito in Florida. I trained with him about 10 years ago, obviously not anymore. He's one of those guys that puts a lot into his fitness. And when he's motivated, and that's the key, motivated, you see what type of player he can and will be. he's going to be a dangerous player for those Florida Panthers.
I personally hope history repeats itself, because Tarasenko was the big cog last year at the deadline. Him and Patrick Kane go to the Rangers, and the chemistry seemed to be a bit off from the beginning there, and they didn't do anything substantial in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So Tarasenko with the Florida Panthers, it is what it is. The Betano wrap-up is presented by Betano.ca. The game starts now, 19+. Please play responsibly. Major announcement. Betano is the official partner of Copa America 2024, taking the beautiful game to new heights in the Americas. Join Betano on their journey of passion, unity, and unforgettable football moments. I like the over in this game. As I mentioned, I got to play it. The last 7 straight meetings, Leafs and Sabres, have hit the over 6.5. I think I got it at even money last night. I think the number has probably changed today, but it just seems like every time the Leafs and Sabres, Stewie, get together, it's a chaotic game, and I expect the same tonight.
Well, I'm going to take the under, but I'm going to use the $6 that I have in my pocket currently, and I'm going to put an anytime goal on Austin Matthews. He's scoreless in 2, 1 in his last 5 games. He's due, and he's due big. So I'll call a 3-1, 4-1 win by Toronto, hat trick by Austin Matthews. And if there's any discretion on that, hit me up on Twitter at Vic. Vic, what's Vic's last name?
Palladian.
Palladian. Yeah. At Vic Palladian. That's my social media handle. Send your gripes and concerns there, please, and thank you.
The Armenian assassin himself. And we are reunited. We talked about being reunited. You, Vic, and I all work together at another company, and now we're all together as one here on the Leafs Morning Take branch. So looking forward to the next couple of days, as I mentioned. Elliot Friedman. Yes, that's right. Not the imposter. Elliot Friedman is going to drop by tomorrow's show. We're going to break down the Leafs perspective as they head into the trade deadline. Stewie, thank you so much for this. Enjoy the game tonight, buddy.
Okay. All right. We'll see. It's always great working with you as always there.
Love you, man. That's Anthony Stewart at the Leafs Nation 401. Do me a favor. Hammer that subscribe button. Hammer that like button before you go. Would be really, really appreciated. Jay Rosehill back in the mix tomorrow. Many thanks to producer Vic and, of course, our guest today and Dave Pagnotta. That's Anthony Stewart. I'm Nick Alberga. Talk on Thursday. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews. We got clips. We got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.